So now the reason 1913 is important, and I said to you a moment ago that we did that without having any federal income tax. In 1913, Woodrow Wilson, his administration, decided that we should have a federal income tax. We had actually had a federal income tax under Abraham Lincoln. It was the last year of his administration prior to his death, and Congress had voted in to do a federal income tax so they could pay for the war. The war ended, and so they never implemented that tax. And so from that time until 1913, we still did not have a federal income tax. But the Woodrow Wilson administration said, we need a federal income tax. We need to tax the citizens of the United States of America. And I've talked about this in previous videos. I'm not going to go into it tonight because of timing, but I will just tell you that they told us that 1% on people making $20,000, which was a big amount of money back in 1913, that's what they'd have to pay, and 7% up to 500,000, I think. Didn't look that number up prior to this, but it's a pretty significant number. And they told us that'll be the last tax we'll ever need to charge. That'll take care of everything from this point forward. Totally pay the bills of the United States of America. And as you can tell on this little chart right here, wrong way. That worked. That worked for 3 years. And then they said, oh, we made a mistake. We just got to double it. So they doubled it. And then they said, oh, we made a mistake. And they took it all the way up to the top tax bracket now being about 67%. And then they said, oh, we miscalculated again. It needs to be 73%. And then they brought it down, went through the Great Depression, then brought it up 63%, 78%, 94%. And for over a decade, it was above 91% was the top tax bracket. Now, this is going from a nation that is the wealthiest by GDP in the world, getting paid by other nations, what we're going to call the External Revenue Service, to the Internal Revenue Service charging its citizens. And with that in mind, while it has continued to work and we still continue to function, and our nation has done some amazing things, the reality is that it's costly. As a matter of fact, if I put that into perspective, suppose that you have an IRA, an individual retirement account, a 401k, whatever it is that you have for your retirement account that grows tax deferred, that you don't pay taxes on. And suppose you get your statement out, it says it's worth $1 million. And you look at that statement, you're like, look here, I've got $1 million. The problem is the IRS does not agree with you. Because if you are at the current top tax rate of 37%, the IRS says, no. $630,000 of that million is yours. $370,000 of it is the IRS's. And that's really important to understand. The IRS knows that $370,000 of your IRA money is their money, even though they didn't contribute a dime to it, because they have to pay the bills of our country, because we now tax through IRS, Internal Revenue Service, rather than ERS, External Revenue Service. We do have tariffs, no doubt, even before President Trump said that. And even if you go back and check, many people before, Republican leaders, Democrat leaders, talked about reciprocal taxes. There are videos out there of Nancy Pelosi, of Chuck Schumer, of Mitch McConnell, of George Bush. They're all talking about how we need to have this. But President Trump decided to implement it. We'll talk about in a moment whether that's wise or not. But to that point, and to this point here, the fact that your $1 million IRA is not yours is indeed thanks to 1913, when the Wilson administration said we need to have an income tax in America. And all of the other politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, followed along. One other thing to note on this chart is this line right here. If you take all these highs and these lows and you average them out, it turns out that the top tax rate in our country has been, the top tax bracket, 56.58%. So we're actually enjoying about a 20% reduction in tax compared to the high average. And I appreciate that greatly, but with debt in the nation being like it is, that's a little concerning, I think, whether or not we can stay at 37% or whether or not we might have to increase the tax rate for the IRS if we don't have a plan to do something with the ERS. Now, to be sure, I want to express, I'm not saying that I think the tariffs are perfect, are safe, are a great plan, I'm not sure any more than most people are right now, whether or not it is or not. I think it is, but I don't know that. And so, like you, I'm watching carefully what this means. But for the purpose of what I'm showing you with these first few slides, is just simply to say, you need to think about the fact that we have a generation or two or three or more down the road that we want to make sure they have the same country and the same opportunities we have. And we might have to ask ourselves, are the strategies we're using today the best strategies for how we go forward? And will they make it so that if we're here for another 20, 30, 40 years, we're going to be happy with how it looks? And so that's part of why I'm taking time to look at the fundamentals of what's happening right now, both in the economy, geopolitically, and the markets as well. So now to 2025. Hey, you know what? We're still the wealthiest nation in the world by GDP. But you can see that China is catching up. In that previous slide, they were less than half of where we are. Today, they're about 2/3 to where we are now. They're catching up. And you know what? I'm not opposed to any nation catching up and surpassing the United States if they do a good job. But if it's happening because we're having poor management problems, or we're not thinking clearly how to handle our own finances well, how to manage our own financial house well, that does bother me. And you'll note that United Kingdom is now down here about 6. And I'm going to explain to you in a minute why I've even pointing out the United Kingdom, because I think it's an important thing as we look at some of the items that are happening right now in the world. So while we're still up there, yay, I want to make sure we stay there for a long time to come, for my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren as well.